Hi guys, it's Taylor and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing my August 2018 wrap-up. So for the month of August I actually read a lot of books. We had Booktubeathon and I was just so motivated to read more that I just didn't stop. Some of these are audiobooks. Actually I think only one of them is an audiobook and it's a reread. But for the most part everything, I like it's a mix of comic books, fantasy. That's about it. It's usually what it is. So, enough of my rambling. Let's get started. The first book I read for the month of August is Hellboy Volume 1, Seed of Destruction. This is the first comic book in the series created by Mike Mignola. Fun fact, I actually met him when I was working Comic-Con. His booth was almost right across from my company's booth, so that's a fun fact. This was okay. I love the movies, which were directed by Guillermo del Toro, and I like the aesthetic, and I do like the idea of Hellboy, and the art style, very good, very interesting. I just wasn't super interested in the story, and I didn't like how the plot progressed, and it was a little confusing. I feel like if I hadn't seen the movies first, I wouldn't know what to do with this. But I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and I think I might continue with the series. We'll see. If another one of these happens to fall into my lap, or I find it at the bookstore, I'll definitely pick it up and continue. The next book I read was Full Moon by Jim Butcher. This is the second book in the Dresden Files series, a series that I am making my way through faster than I do with most other book series, even though my feelings on this series are a bit mixed. I like the books, they're a lot of fun. Harry Dresden is a great character. This book, this series has a lot of that early 2000s sexism that I'm not entirely comfortable with. The female characters are interesting and they usually have a great foundation laid for them. But then you have to go and describe how naked or sexy or how leggy they are, and it kind of impedes their, how interesting they are. And on top of that, Harry Dresden lampshades how sexist he is. He's always like, ha ha ha, I'm a chauvinist, I know, but I can't resist a damsel in distress. And just because he admits to being a chauvinist does not mean that he isn't one, or that it makes it better. But I still really like the series. If you don't know, it's a sort of supernatural monster of the week detective series. So in each book there's like a new monster or supernatural creature that the Chicago's only wizard, Harry Dresden, has to fight. And I'm kind of a sucker for these types of books, so I really did like this. I believe I rated it 4 out of 5 stars, and I am planning on reading the next book very soon. The next book I read was also for Booktubeathon, and that's Percy Jackson and the Tiny's Curse by Rick Riordan. It's the 3rd book in the Percy Jackson series, and it's basically me continuing my very slow read-through of the series. I basically read one of these books a year. And even though I really like the series, I can never really get myself to read more than 1 book a year. Maybe because I am so far past the age range. Like maybe 10 years ago I would have been able to just blaze through the series, but now, you know, I read one and I'm kind of exhausted. I did rate this 4 out of 5 stars. I do really like the characters. I like Percy's little crush that he's developing on Annabeth, even though, actually, does no one realize that Percy and Annabeth are cousins? This is one of those things that I kind of knew in the back of my mind, but as I'm talking about this, like talking to the camera, I'm realizing that they're cousins and it's kind of hitting me, and I don't know why people ship Perciveth that much anymore. I guess maybe you're not supposed to think too much on it, but this is why you're supposed to read the series at 12 and not at 22. The next book I read was on audiobook, and that is The Diviners by Leva Bray. This is my 2nd time reading this book, and it never disappoints. This is probably my 2nd or 3rd favorite series in the world. It competes with The Court of Thorns and Roses, which, if you don't know, is also one of my favorite series. But these books are so good. If you don't know, it's flappers in the 1920s fighting ghosts, and they have psychic powers. It's also very diverse. You get a lot of different perspectives of the different, you know, immigrant and people of color and LGBT plus, like how they lived in the 1920s, and this series does a very good job of highlighting that. So you should read it. I listened to it on audiobook during work, and you could tell when things were getting spooky because I would be typing at my desk and my shoulders would go up and I'd go into defense mode. But this is a really good series. I'm happy I'm rereading it. You should read it. The next book I read is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This book took me so long to read. I started it July 1st and I didn't finish it until, I believe, early August. It usually doesn't take me this long to finish books, but this book was a slow one, and of course I had to put it on hold for Booktubeathon. This book is pretty famous on Booktube now, and I believe The Gentleman Bastards is a very popular series, and that's maybe why my feelings on it were a little more mixed than I had expected. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, you know, so I didn't hate it. I actually really liked it. But I think it was a little overhyped for me, and I was expecting something that wasn't what I got, but the dialogue is excellent, the world building is a bit too much. I buddy read this with one of my in real life, IRL, my friends from college, and we were talking about how we never thought we would read a book with too much world building, but that's kind of what this book is, and I'm not saying it's complete, like it's a bad thing, but I don't think this book needed to be as long as it was. Either way, I really liked it, and you should read it. I'm so excited for this next book. The next book I read in August was The Adventure Zone, graphic novel by Clint McElroy, Griffin McElroy, Justin McElroy, Travis McElroy, and Carrie Peached. If you don't know what The Adventure Zone is, it's a podcast done by the McElroy brothers, who are the hosts of the podcast My Brother and Me. The Adventure Zone is a podcast where the McElroy brothers, and it's 3 brothers, and their dad, Clint McElroy, play Dungeons & Dragons together. They're moving on to other role-playing games, but it started off with Dungeons & Dragons. And when I first listened to this podcast, I was a little bit skeptical, but when I tell you it is one of the happiest things I've experienced in my life. 3 brothers and their dad getting together to play games. Stupidity ensues. I've never laughed so hard, or smiled so hard, or cried so hard at a single piece of media. And I loved it so much that I actually decorated my graduation cap so that it's based off of this podcast. Here it is. It has one of my favorite quotes from the podcast, which is, "You're going to be amazing." I don't know if you can see it. And you've got the Extreme Teen Bible, Voidfish, Rail Splitter, and the Umbra Staff. And the Umbra Staff. So this is based off of their first campaign arc, called Here There Be Gerblins. It's really funny. I remember reading this in one day and I couldn't stop laughing. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and it's definitely going to be on my best books of 2018 list. My advice, if you want to pick this up, is to listen to the podcast first. Start with episode 1.5, because episode 1 was when they didn't know how to edit a D&D podcast, so it's too long. Start with episode 1.5. It takes a couple episodes to get into, but once you get used to their dynamic and where they're going with this podcast, it's really worth your time. Next up, we've got Before the Devil Breaks You by Liv Bray. This is the 3rd book in the Diviner series, aka one of my favorite book series of all time. Isn't the cover beautiful? I absolutely adore this series. I don't know what else to say other than you should really read it. This book series partially takes place in a mental asylum and features the diviners trying to, I guess, work through their powers and figure out how their powers work. I don't want to spoil too much because there's a lot happening in this series, but you should definitely read it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It will definitely be on my top, whatever books of 2018. The next book I picked up was A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe by Alex White. This is the very last book I read in August, and it was probably the worst thing I read in August. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. I kind of maybe want to go back and give it 3 stars, but we'll see. I'm thinking about doing a review for this book because there were some elements that I really liked, and that this is a science fiction. Let me tell you what it's about. It's about a washed-up treasure hunter and a wealthy and famous space car driver, I don't know, and they join a crew of the ship called the Capricious, and they get wrapped up in this sort of quest to find one of the biggest and deadliest warships in the galaxy, the Harrow, and they're being pursued by this secret society and this mysterious figure named Mother. The concept is interesting. The writing, for the most part, is pretty good. I like that the main characters are women. One of the main characters is a bisexual woman of color. It didn't give me what I wanted. This is in space. I wanted aliens. Didn't really get aliens. It was kind of confusing in some parts. Sometimes I didn't even know what was happening. It just sounded like they were yelling space things. Like, quick, thrusters to space thing, come in, 243, space thing. And I get that that's probably a staple in the hardcore science fiction genre, but it's not really for me because I was confused for about 60% of this book. And I didn't understand all of these eureka moments. Maybe I'll be kinder to it. I don't know. I'll figure that out if I ever get around to actually doing a review on this channel. And that was my August wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Please tell me if you've read any of these books down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye.